How do teams fail? What are the steps that occur in the life of a team that lead it to become unsuccessful? These are the things I will be talking about in today's session here at the Corporate Mechanic. Hey, welcome back. It's me, Joey. I know I've been out for quite some time. I've got a lot of stuff that I had to work on, and so therefore I just had to take a short pause for making these videos. But good thing is I'm here, and we're still doing videos on management and leadership topics. So for those who have joined here for the first time, welcome to the Corporate Mechanic. This is a show about management and leadership topics, okay? And we'll be talking a lot about things that will help you grow and become a better manager and leader, all right? So today, I'd like to talk about how do teams fail. Essentially, what I'd like to bring to the table is that, as we all know, in teams, we don't always succeed. There are situations where we probably gotten into teams that are not really functioning in the way that we would want them to do. Okay? But how do they get there? How do they become failures? How do they become dysfunctional? Now, what I'd like to discuss are basically comes from a book by Patrick Lencioni, known as The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a very nice book. I do suggest that you grab a copy of it. But what I'll be talking about are just basically the Cliff Notes version of that book. All right. So, where does it all begin? As I mentioned, there are 5 dysfunctions. These are basically things that a team goes into as it becomes a failure. I'd like to use the term failure because essentially there is no team that will become successful if these things are in place. Okay. So the first level, or the first thing that happens in a team, is the absence of trust. Everything starts from there. If you are in a team and you don't trust your teammates, you don't trust your leader, that is the first sign of failure. Okay? So it all starts with building trust with one another. We actually had several episodes that talk about trust as a very important competency of any leader. So as a leader, you need to be able to establish trust in your teams. So how do you do that? How do you establish trust? Well, the first and the simplest approach to doing that is to become vulnerable. As a leader, you need to be human. You need to show your team that you are as valuable as them. If you tend to have expectations that you yourself will not fail, that you are always correct, that you are infallible, this starts to create doubt in the minds of your teammates. This will create doubt in your subordinates, that they will feel that, how can I trust my boss? He's always correct. Lagi na lang siya tama. Right? So these are typical words that you will hear from your team if you don't show vulnerability. And that creates mistrust. That creates an absence of trust. And that is the first sign of failure in teams. Now, after that level, once people start distrusting one another, what happens next is what we call the fear of conflict. Because I don't trust other people, I'm not willing to be vulnerable, I would rather not engage in conflict within the team. And especially for Filipinos, this is something that I really like to point out. Because most Filipinos often don't want to engage in conflict. The term na, para walang away, para walang gulo. We often feel that that is a good approach, but the reality is it's not. Why? Because if you don't engage in conflict, what happens is that people will just simply say yes to whatever you do. They have their own ideas, but they would rather not put that in the table. Sometimes those ideas are actually better ideas. But since you would rather avoid being in conflict, you'd rather shut up, things will eventually spiral and become out of control and will eventually lead to teams' failures. Now, as a leader, as a manager, you are expected to encourage conflict. Okay? So, there's this saying, I've seen this in the internet, probably you can Google for it, people. There's this saying that if you don't hear what people have to say, you will eventually be left with people that won't say anything. Okay, or something like that. But the message there is that you have to encourage your team to speak up. Okay, you have to encourage them. They could have good ideas. They could even have better ideas than you have. But because they don't want to get into a fight, they don't want to overrule their boss, they don't want to put their boss in a bad position, they just shut up. Even if that's the solution, even if that's a better approach to doing things, they'd rather shut up because they fear conflict. And why do they fear conflict? Because there is distrust. There is an absence of trust in the organization. Okay, so you see how it goes up, If you don't have trust, then that creates a fear of conflict. People will not want to, talk to you. Especially here in the Philippines, that is so common. Okay? And so what happens after that? Once people start not talking, okay, when they don't want to share their ideas, there will be a lack of commitment. There will be a lack of commitment. People will just, because they just said yes to whatever you told them, there's really no buy-in. Sabi mo kaya ako ginagawa to. The reason why I'm doing this because you said so. The boss said so. The boss wanted this. Am I really into it? No, not really. But why didn't you speak up? Because I don't trust him. I don't trust speaking up because he might say something negative. So again, it's another step towards failure. The lack of commitment. And that lack of commitment comes from the fact that people have no buy-in. Okay? People have no buy-in on any decision that is being made within the team because they weren't able to speak out their thoughts. Okay? So as a leader, make sure that people are committed, that there is clarity on what needs to happen. People understand fully. Because, if you made a decision, let's just say you're a leader, you made a decision on behalf of the team, you did not let the team speak up, then you are guaranteed that your team members just said yes without really thinking through that decision. Okay, they did not think through it, they did not buy into it, they just said yes because you said so. Okay, and that's pretty bad, That's pretty bad. So it leads to failure. So make it clear to your team. Clarify what needs to happen. Clarify what's going on. Make sure that they have buy-in so that they can support you. Alright? So that's the third dysfunction. That's the third level. Now, if that pushes through further, what happens is that there will be avoidance of accountability. Because I did not buy into it, don't expect me to really, take on the blame or take on the responsibility or just to be, just to accept whatever that piece of work is. Because I'm not fully sold into the idea, I'm not that accountable. I will try to avoid accountability. It was your decision. So if it fails, it's your fault, it's not mine. I did not say yes to it. I was coerced to saying yes to that thing. So you can see that they will distance themselves from whatever that decision, whatever that move of that team was. Okay? And at that point, you're already seeing the team break apart. You're already seeing the team not becoming a team. Because they're trying to distance themselves. They're trying to avoid accountability at all costs. Okay. So how do you fix that? You fix that by discussing the issues. Whenever there's avoidance of accountability, this stems from the fact that there are already issues that are brewing. Okay? You are already seeing some problems within the team. And that often requires having difficult conversations. Okay? If somebody is truly at fault, we have to get into that discussion. However difficult it might be, we have to clear things up. Okay? We cannot just not talk to one another and assume that it was that person's problem or that person's problem. No, we have to get together as a team to discuss what is going on. And that requires having very difficult conversations. Conversations like what happened, what led us here, how can we resolve that? Because these types of discussions will often lead to blaming one another because it was his fault, it was that fault. It can get into that level. But what's important is that we get these things out in the open and try to objectively find solutions rather than pointing fingers. The point of having these difficult conversations is not really to identify who's at fault, but more importantly, how do we get out of this situation? In doing that discussion, what definitely would happen is who did what. Okay, but again, don't blame, don't finger point. Okay, just accept that this was what happened, and you as a leader might even be the one who started it all. You might be the guy at fault. And again, going back to the first thing that we mentioned, be vulnerable. Accept the fact that you could be at fault as well. Alright? So again, if there is an avoidance of accountability and that is not addressed, it leads to the last part of, or the last dysfunction of the team, which is inattention to results. At that point, no one really cares about the project anymore. No one really cares about the goals of the team. At that point, people are more concerned with their individual goals rather than the goals of the team. Okay, when we talk about the results, we're talking about the goals of the team. When you have inattention to results, that only means that no one cares. No one cares about the outcome of the team. They're more concerned with their own personal goals. And at that point, the team has failed. Alright? So, as a manager, as a leader, in order to fix that, you get people to talk about the outcomes, the goals. You want them to focus on why are we doing this in the first place. You want them to be more dedicated towards the goals of the team rather than their individual goals. You want their goals to be aligned to the goals of the team. So that's what you need to do as a leader, as a manager. Get them to see that their goals are tied into the goals of the organization. Okay? So there. So that's how teams fail. Okay? It all starts with the absence of trust, which results to a fear of conflict, which eventually will result to a lack of commitment, okay, and avoiding any accountability, and eventually not caring about the goals or the results of the team's purpose. Okay, so I've also mentioned ways by which you can try to address these things, and I do hope that as a manager you try to avoid these things. You try to address these things as you see them, because this will happen. Okay, this will happen. So you start at the very bottom. You start by making sure that there is trust and openness within your teams, within your organizations. Alright? So I do hope I was able to give you some insight. This is something that is very powerful, very useful, especially for us here in the Philippines. I really, really encourage managers to look into your organizations and see if these things are already happening and try to address these situations as early as possible. Okay? So if you need more inputs, if you have some comments about this, please do, write that in the comment section, email us personally. If you need trainings in your organization and or any management consulting work, so I'm very much available to do that. So just send me a personal message and I'll definitely try to get back to you as soon as possible. Okay? So do like and subscribe, hit on the notification button in this channel so that you get notified whenever we have new episodes. Okay? I'll be doing several other episodes. I'm just finishing off our episodes on teams. Okay, so you might have noticed the focus has been pretty much on teams on the last couple of episodes. We'll be focusing on other areas such as agile, some topics on leadership, some business and management topics, and a lot more. If you have something, again, just send us a message and we'll be very glad to talk about that. All right. So thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Stay safe and of course, stay blessed.